Women are powerful creators. The Align Women podcast features female entrepreneurs, leaders, and other professional women who've demonstrated agency and innovation in their personal and professional lives. I'm your host, Amy Evans. I have authentic, intimate conversations with my guests that highlight their paths to success, their struggles and accomplishments, and the things that currently excite, motivate, and inspire them to turn their visions into reality. Welcome to the Align Women podcast. I'm Amy Evans, your host and the founder of Align Women, a leadership and networking organization for professional women. The podcast features female entrepreneurs, leaders, and other professional women who've demonstrated agency and innovation in their personal and professional lives. And with me today is Jackie Kibler. Jackie has her own company, the JW Kibler Group, and she's certified as a professional EOS implementer, which we'll talk more about in just a moment. We were introduced by a mutual friend, and I'm thrilled that she's a member of one of my Align Women networking masterminds. Welcome, Jackie.
Thank you for having me, Amy.
I'm so glad you're here. Let's talk about EOS. Let's start there. Tell me what it is and tell me what you do for your clients as a professional EOS implementer.
Absolutely. So I'm glad we're talking about EOS. It's like a passion point of mine. So EOS is based off the book Traction, and it's the entrepreneurial operating system. What it does is it helps entrepreneurial CEOs and the leadership teams get more of what they want from their business. And what I mean by that really is, if you think of an entrepreneur, usually they have a passion. So we'll just say baking. Because I was with somebody today that was talking about making English muffins. So their passion is baking, and everyone wants their baked goods, and they're building their company and they're adding people, and they're passionate about the business. But what happens is they hit a ceiling and they really can't go any further, because although they're passionate about baking, they don't know how to run the business. So they tend to hit walls and not know where to go. What I do, in effect, is I help companies in three ways. The first is crafting a vision and bringing it down to the ground. If you think about companies, like usually the CEO has a vision of what the company is, but maybe other people in the company don't know what it is, or they think it's something else and they're not aligned to it. So we help craft that vision, bring it down to the ground, have everyone aligned to it, and execute against it, which is the traction. Traction is all about executing against the vision. And then the third thing that we do is we help companies to be healthier, because if you can imagine everybody in a company all rowing in the same direction with discipline and accountability, I mean, the company is going to be more profitable. So I've seen that within the companies that I work with, and even companies that are also on EOS with other implementers.
That all makes sense. And here's a question for you.
Sure.
What does it sound like when someone can use the EOS system to improve their business? Because I'm pretty confident that someone's not coming to you and saying, I've hit a ceiling, or I've maxed out my capacity as a CEO or as a leader. What are as the person, as the entrepreneur inside the business that they're passionate about and that they've grown, what are they expressing are their problems? What would my audience be saying to you if they had a problem that EOS could solve?
So I'll give you a few. So the first, a lot of companies that I'm working with, and I'll give you one specifically. There's a company that I'm working with that their revenues have gone up to $31 million. Their profit for the company is $400,000.
Oh my.
So, I mean, what happens is, you might have expenditures that are out of sync. You may have people that are working for you that aren't doing what they need to do. Usually people are like, when they get to me, it's like, I don't know what to do. I'm trying to do these things. I'm trying to do what I know, and I don't know how to go further. There are other companies where the CEO, there's a recruiting company that I work with where the CEO literally was working 24/7. And she was, everything from CEO to bottle washer in the company. but she did have people that worked for her, and they would take they'd take extended lunches. They'd come in late. They'd call in sick. And so she was doing the work of 5, 6, 7 people, and she had people that were doing the work of a quarter of a person. And that happens more often than not, because usually you'll have somebody that's bringing on their friends, somebody that they know, a family member, and they're not able to maximize what those people are doing. So it's usually a people issue. They might be measuring the wrong KPIs. We call it a scorecard, but out in the real world, it's a KPI. Processes. No one does things the same way. So, if you've got somebody that's newly hired, so maybe you brought me into your company, and you're like, okay, so this is sort of on the job training. You sit me with Sally. Sally teaches me her way of doing things, and then she's out for the next couple of days. So I sit with Jody. Jody's like, oh yeah, well, I do it, but I do it an entirely different way. So that makes a company not sustainable and not scalable. So if a company wants to make themselves the best of what they do, they need to have an infrastructure. Or if they want to be scalable, to grow their company and also be sustainable without imploding, that's usually another thing that people come to EOS for. You have to have some form of an operating system to run your business. And usually when I talk about an operating system, people are like, oh, like Microsoft? Like, no. It is literally how you run your business, not the software. Although, I do use a specific software, which I introduce to every client to help them manage their business, but that's just a partner company. It's really, how do you run your business day to day? What accountabilities, what discipline, and how are you going to reach that strategy through the tactical components or execution that you're doing? That was a really long answer. Sorry.
That was a great answer. And I imagine what I get from what you explained is that the likelihood is that a lot of these issues exist at the same time. Yeah. So it may be some that the entrepreneur needs different leadership skills. It may be that friends and family were hired in the early growth stages, and those people may not be the right people for the next growth stage. It may be that they're tracking the wrong metrics. And it may be that they're hemorrhaging money in places that they're not aware of. And so I imagine that part of what you do when you go into a new company, and it must be interesting and exciting for you, is play a little bit of detective and untangle these different pieces through your processes in order to identify how to address each of them. Because I can't imagine that it's ever just one of these things.
It's never just one. Here's one thing that is kind of fun. Usually when it is the founder of a company, and I talked about that recruiting company, but you can imagine usually somebody who founds a company, they're doing a lot, but they're also controlling a lot because it's their baby. So what I do with almost every single person is I help sort of unwrap the arms a little bit, because once they start letting other people come in and do work, it's like, oh my gosh, I can breathe. And there's a marketing company in Burbank that I work with that was a big thing for the first 6 months. And now it's like her leadership team is taking things, and she can actually grow the business instead of trying to hold it all so tight because it's her baby.
You probably understand more than a lot of people who aren't entrepreneurs that there's a very interesting shift that happens in the entrepreneurial journey, which is that a lot of times these businesses are started out of passion, and they're treated like babies, and they're held closely because the entrepreneur has a vision about what they want it to be. And in order to get to the next growth stage, that has to be released a bit. But it's almost completely contradictory to the way that the process started. And being in the middle of that process myself, I totally relate to what you're explaining. And I'm on my 6th company, and I've never had a requirement for growth like I do on number 6. Like 1 through 5 were not this much of a call to personal growth as number 6 is, which is fun and exciting and interesting and challenging all at the same time.
It's your passion, and that passion brings people to you, which is why I'm a member of Align Women, because it's something that you are 100% like, this is what I want. This is where I want it to go.
Yes, and it oozes from my pores, and I am aware of that, and I am glad that attracts the quality of women around me that I have right now. It's mind blowing. Tell me what I imagine a lot of people come to you when there's, let's call it a crisis, when something is really going wrong, when the owner is working 24/7 like you described, or when the owner wants to fire all the employees because none of them are doing what the owner wants, but if they fired all the employees, the owner would have to work twice 24/7.
Right.
If you had your way, if you were coaching a baby entrepreneur who wasn't at the point yet of crisis, what are the signs? What are the waypoints at which you would say, if you put EOS in now, you will be able to avoid some of the crises that most entrepreneurs get to before they realize they need a system like this?
So that's an interesting thing, because usually what I have found is when a company is around for 3 years or a little more, that's the time to implement. I have had people talk to me that are startups, and then, I mean, they don't have the people or the bandwidth throughout the organization to bring something like this in. So once you have some sort of a rhythm or cadence, people behind you, then that is when I would start bringing EOS in. Having said that, there's always an exception to the rule. So there is a organization that I'm speaking with right now. They're executive coaches, and they've also got this learning academy to train executive coaches. And she wants it just set up in a way that will allow her to do more of the business development before, as she's beginning to skyrocket, because it will, starting in October, based on what I'm seeing, it'll skyrocket. But usually you just want to make sure you've got at least some sort of foundation before you're implementing something like this. And there's people that you can, go as a united front with. So you can bring it down through the organization.
That makes sense. So one of my favorite questions is, what do you love about what you do? And it's hard to miss when you talk about helping businesses get these systems in place. It oozes out of your pores.
Yeah.
How much you enjoy it. But how would you describe what you love about what you do?
Well, you said it. I mean, I'm passionate about helping people bring their companies to the next level. I mean, I get juiced when I see transformation of companies, even after like 6-8 months, where you're putting in the work and you're doing what you need to do. And then you see your teams and your company actually turning. I've got some companies that have been around for 60 years, and they knew 60 years one way to do things. And I mean, it was your grandfather and then your dad and then you, or, it's amazing seeing the transformation. And when I'm working with my clients, and as you know, about 70% of the companies I work with are all female. It's strong females that want to make a difference in the world. And the fact that I can help them make that difference, I mean, I just got tingles as I said that.
Yeah, you get to have exponential impact.
It's awesome. It is awesome. And I mean, I couldn't ask for anything more than this. I mean, EOS is, before EOS, like, I did several components of this as I was growing up in leadership. And when I found EOS, it was like, what I did on steroids instinctively in a beautiful package that was proven. So to me, being able to share that with others and watch them flourish is just, it's a gift.
I love it. So you are what I would call a super connector. I'm sure that's not the first time anybody's called you that. I have certainly benefited from your ability to super connect, and I'm fascinated with super connectors. I feel like a baby super connector myself, but I'm always interested in observing other people who've done it longer and do it better than me. How did you develop that skill? And totally selfishly, I'm going to ask, do you have any tips for nurturing that ability?
So I'm going to go a little psychological on you. So I am all about people. My passion is people. And when I'm talking to people, and you know this personally, I'm digging a little bit about who you are, what you like, tell me about your company, and then I start asking about some of the things that you need. And because I work with different people and I know different people in we're in Los Angeles, so it could be Los Angeles, Orange County. Those are two large areas that I've got that I know people.
Sure.
I always want to help them. So I'm like you said, benefiting you. Not only did I help you, but I also helped the people that I was introducing to you. So that also gives me tingles. There's a company that is a client of mine, and she helps move or transition the aging community within Los Angeles. And she needed some people. She needed the right people in the right seats. And it was the weirdest like kismet thing, but one of the people that I talked to her about when I first met her called me. And she's like, hey, how are you? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, this can't be happening. So I introduced the two ladies together. They fell in love. And I mean that from a business perspective.
Right.
And now they're working together. And my husband was like, oh my gosh, that was the coolest thing. Because the CEO desperately needed help. And the person that I introduced her to is loyal and knows the industry, and it just connects. So every time I'm with people, I'm trying to find out where their gaps are and where, what their needs are and help them to fill those gaps. It just makes me feel better. Maybe it's selfish. I don't know.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. Those are win-win-wins, right? I love triple wins. It's good for the person. It's good for the two people you're connecting. That's a win and a win. And then it's good for you too. So that's the best kind, I think.
Well, and I also feel it comes back tenfold. I've worked with a lot of different people and they know what I'm doing now. And, when they hear of like the things that we were talking about earlier, they're like, hey, let me introduce you to Jackie. And even though if they can't explain EOS completely, they're like, if you want to better your business, just talk to her. Because I coach folks. I do different things than probably a lot of implementers, just because everything with me again is about the people. Yeah. So I get to know what they want, what they need, and then I begin bringing people into them too.
Yeah. Yeah. And you do it. I will pay you this compliment. I haven't said this to you, but you do it in a way that is, you're very adept at asking the right questions to really understand what makes someone tick. And you're also very good at doing that in a very non-judgmental way. So I think a lot of people have a perception that someone who identifies as like a coach is going to tell them what to do, right? This is what I'm doing. And someone else is going to come in and say, you shouldn't be doing it that way. You should be doing it this way. And that sets up kind of a confrontational feeling. And you are amazing at really listening and asking really good questions and making connections that will really benefit the person that you're talking to in a way that's not, it doesn't feel judgy. It's really lovely to watch. It's a skill that I will continue to observe in you because I would like to I feel like I don't always come off as non-judgy as you do. So I will continue to observe that because I really admire that in you.
Well, thank you. That means a lot. So I appreciate that.
So I want to dig a little bit backwards because I love asking questions about how you got where you are and some of the challenges that you have had as a person, as a woman, as an entrepreneur, as someone in sales. And I asked you a few questions in our pre-interview process, and I noticed a through line in about 3 of your responses. And that was that you have struggled with learning to let go of other people's opinions of you. And yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. I find that to be a particular challenge that I've had, that other women I've talked to have had. I am a huge fan of the book How Women Rise by Sally Helgeson, and it's a book that lists 12 habits that women develop over their lifetimes. A lot of them, how women rise.
Thank you.
And it's she partnered with the man that wrote the book What Got You Here Won't Get You There, which was like a seminal coaching book about how to advance in your career. But what he realized and what she realized was the tips that he gave in that book were very much for men and didn't apply to women, because the habits that women learn that might hold them back in developing their careers are different from the habits that men learn. And so How Women Rise is about 12 habits that women can pay attention to and realize that they can maybe shift or break in order to advance. And being concerned about other people's opinions of us is one of those habits. We're really socialized to be to please others and to be validated by that pleasing. And so learning to let go of that as you're advancing in your career is a big one. And I think one, I'm not sure that's one any of us ever really put down and walk away from. But tell me what that experience has been like for you and how you've evolved in that over your professional career.
I honestly, like you said, I don't think it's gone 100%, but, and I guess this just totally aligns with what you were saying. I mean, growing up, anyone that I considered to be an elder to me, teachers, adults, anyone, I mean, it could have been, anybody. And I was very much, getting people's acceptance that were what I considered to be more than me was a big deal. I'd say, growing up the way I did in Dun & Bradstreet, so I just now went from childhood to career. Growing up at Dun & Bradstreet, it was very much of a male-dominated, good old boys type of company. And I'm sure that's changed a lot. There's a lot of women that are probably leaders there. But for you to get where you wanted to go, I mean, it was very much of a yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. You tell me to jump. It's not how high, but when can I come down? Right. And so and I was successful doing that, and to your point, I've never been really judgy. I can be chameleonic. So when I did that, I did what I needed to do. And then when I finally, I guess maybe 10 years ago, I just was like, you know what? You're holding yourself back because you're so concerned about what other people think that you're not helping yourself. Yeah. So, I mean, I think now, we'll just say through my years at Vistage, where, I was working with, somewhere between 60 and 80 CEO entrepreneurs, I think they were the ones that coined it. They're like, you are enough. You can do this. And I mean, I'm kind of tearing up a little bit as I'm saying that back, because it really finally, so I started being able to be okay with myself. But when they sat me down And this was, I mean, I had one-to-ones with all of them to work with them on their business and coach them towards their business. And they were just like, you're enough. Go be you. I mean, I'll never forget it. And that's why I'm still so close with so many of those chairs. So when I'm talking to people, I make sure that they know that they can do whatever they want.
Yeah. And that's a wonderful message that a lot of us didn't get. And I think there's a beautiful thing that happens. This is for another conversation entirely. But I think by the time we get to our 40s and our 50s, we've been through enough tribulations personally and professionally, and the people who are going to stick around have stuck around.
Yes.
And it's a little easier to look around and go, oh, right, I'm going to be okay. Like I can take this leap, and I've got my people around me that I know are going to be there to pick me up if it doesn't go exactly the way I expected. And we also, I think this is an important point. There are so many women around us who have gone before and succeeded that now we have a lot more role models to look at, and it doesn't seem as risky to step out as it might have seemed even 20 or 30 years ago. As it might have seemed like in my mom's generation, you still had to play like a man. That was like you had to, and even you had some experience with that, like in the older portion of your career. So I think we're learning. I think the Me Too movement contributes to that, or as a result of that, or I don't know, that's real, 30,000 foot view conversation. But I think that we have more permission to be ourselves and see other people who are being themselves and spread our wings a little bit more. And the more you can encourage other women to do that, the better. And you're contributing to that process too in the way that you're coaching.
Well, I'll tell you what, one of the things that I didn't say that I should have said, when you're growing, when you're as an adult and as a woman, I have had to make people aware. I mean, I feel like I try to be a kind human being. What you don't want is people to associate your kindness to weakness. And that was something that I had to be, okay, you know what? I can be nice. I don't need to be mean. What I noticed with a lot of women when I was, like you said, in my earlier days, there were a lot of times when women it was almost like they'd push other women down.
Yes.
And I want to elevate that's probably why I am the way I am today. I want to elevate women to, I hope I can swear, kick major ass.
Yes.
and be the best they can be, and be kind and be strong and be everything.
That's a really good point. And yes, I think it's true that in the past there were certainly fewer opportunities, right? So if there were 25 slots and only one or two of them would be filled with women, the women had to be competitive with each other in a way that now if there are, a dozen slots available to women, that there's not as much requirement for competition. There was a term that came into my awareness earlier this year, and the term now has a totally different meaning, but the concept really resonated with me, and it was social distancing, and that's a totally different thing now than it was. But the idea was that when a person in a minimized group sees other people of that group being minimized, they naturally distance themselves from that group so that they don't suffer the same minimization. So women might say, well, I'm not like those other women. I'm just like one of the boys. And that's a version of that social distancing, to say, I see how all these other women are being talked down to or not given opportunities. And so I'm going to pretend like I'm not part of that group in order to not suffer the same injustices. And that can apply to all kinds of different groups. And that idea really resonated with me and allowed me to be more forgiving of the way I might have behaved in the past, or the way other women might have behaved in the past when opportunities were less. So interesting I could talk about this stuff all day long. And I love talking with you and hearing what you think about this. I want to hear about the offer that you have for the listeners of the podcast related to your EOS system.
So what I will do with anyone who's interested in learning more about EOS is I will provide a 90-minute complimentary introduction to EOS. I'll learn about you. I'll customize the tools around your needs. And if it's, you know what, I'll even go a step further, because right now, as LA is going backwards, if you want to do virtual, I can do virtual. If you are comfortable doing in person, I'll bring some books for everybody. I'll bring the book traction. And if we're doing it virtual and you want a copy of the book, I will personally either hand deliver or mail one to you.
That's very generous. And to have an hour and a half with Jackie, I'm telling you, in 5 minutes, she's going to ask questions that are going to help you understand yourself and your business better. And I can't imagine after an hour and a half what sort of enlightening realizations you're going to have about how you can move forward. So I highly recommend it. And she's just a lovely person to know anyway. And we won't have time in this conversation to talk about it, but ask her about being in a classic rock band, because that's an entirely other part of Jackie that I think
it is.
I love it. I love it so much. So how can people get a hold of you if they want to just connect with you, or if they want to take advantage of that offer?
So you can definitely go to my website. I mean, I know, Amy, you've got several other means for people to reach out to me, but my website is jwkiblergroup.com. Nice and easy.
Nice and easy. And all of your contact information, social media links will be in the show notes for the podcast. So it will be very easy for people to reach you.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you so much for joining me on the Align Women podcast today, Jackie. I really I could talk with you for hours. It was a pleasure having you.
Oh, thank you for having me. I love talking to you as well.
And thanks everybody for joining us. Look for more episodes with more amazing women at alignwomenpodcast.com.
Thanks for listening to the Align Women podcast. You can find more episodes with more amazing women at alignwomenpodcast.com and visit alignwomen.org to learn more about our leadership and networking organization. This is Amy Evans, and you've been listening to the Align Women podcast.